Wow. At this point, I have personally tried all the Mode keyboards and have built in several times of each model. I currently own both the 2020 and 2022 versions of the 80. I have the 65, and now the newest addition to my collection is the Sonnet. I love this board and it is great. And I have to say, as someone who mainly uses 10 keyless, I might actually be stepping down from TKLs and making 75% my main because of this board. Now in this video, I'll be talking about the Mode Sonnet as to why I can recommend it, why I'm making it one of my endgame boards, and of course I'll be providing some sound test comparisons. First thing I want to talk about is the packaging. One of the strongest points in their brand is really the aesthetics and details to how well they package and deliver their products. Packaging is going to be the first impression, and I think they did a fantastic job and always have for as long as I've been a customer since the 2020 Mode 81st edition. So the Sonnet has already been out for a bit and there are several creator reviews already, and I think they've all done quite a good job in providing details. So I guess my video here will just add to the list of positive feedbacks. I'm also not going to regurgitate any specs, but rather just list them on the screen here for you to pause, or you can visit the Mode website. The configurations can be done here and you have plenty of options for the top and bottom case materials and color, internal weights, accent bar, solder or hot swap PCB, and of course the plates. For my personal build, I went with a gray top case and black bottom case, both in aluminum, FR4 full plate because that's my favorite in most keyboards, a hot swap PCB because it's a lot easier to do multiple sound tests, comparisons with different switches, but I always prefer a solder PCB though. Then I got a multicolored PVD coated stainless steel accent bar and a copper internal weight because it's the heaviest option, even more than the brass due to material density, and for the same price too. And I want my keyboard to be as heavy as possible for just the right price. This keyboard can be heavier if I went with, say, the brass or copper bottom case, but I just didn't feel it was worth the $250 upcharge personally and stuck with the base black aluminum instead. I also learned a harsh lesson after buying the silver mirrored brass bottom case on my Mode 65 and put a huge scratch on it for not being careful, as that was totally my fault for accidentally placing my keyboard on top of a small screw on the desk that I didn't see. It is a beautiful piece, but you just have to be extra careful with handling if this is what you want. Now, usually I prefer a more quieter typing experience, so as with previous Mode keyboards and even from other brands, I've always opted to buy the silicone base dampener or some kind of dampening foam if available. But this time I actually didn't go with it because I just figured I might be happy without it this time, and I can always buy it separately later if I want. The other reason why I buy dampeners is to fill out any hollowness I might hear from a keyboard, but the Sonnet does really well without it, and I'm happy to have it this way. And having a solid sounding keyboard like this with little to no ping and hollowness is also the other reason why I can highly recommend it. Additionally, some of you might still want a silicone base dampener to use it as a stack mount rather than the top mount, not just for the sound but rather the feel. A stack mount will give you a stiffer typing experience as you won't have room for the PCB and plate to flex. At this point, I personally don't have a preference when it comes to top versus stack mount. It's just whichever sounds best, as I've learned to love the feel of both stiff and flexi typing experiences. The sound test configs I did will feature the Everglide Water King V3 switches, which are currently my favorite linear switches, and the tungsten switches as well because long pole stems seem to be quite popular nowadays, so it made sense for me to compare it. Both switches will have sound tests with and without PE foam. Here are the sound tests. The PE foam sounds great here. I actually prefer it installed rather than without. It does make this keyboard sound a bit deeper. Something I've talked about in a couple past videos when reviewing other keyboards is that the PE foam can be too strong of a mod, where it takes away the unique sound signature of the keyboard and make all keyboards sound too alike. Now, of course, you also have to factor in the switches and plates primarily as well to see overall results. But I will say the Sonnet and PE foam doesn't sound anywhere near like my Mr. Suit and Apollo Space 80, which also have PE foam in them, so it's great to have that difference. I also do like the tungsten switches here, but they were too loud and harsh for me in the Sonnet. I could feel and hear the vibrations regardless of PE foam. Now, I can't say if I'll get the same results with other long pole stem switches, but I think a silicone base dampener would go better here if I wanted to go this route. So as originally planned, the Water King switches are much more to my preference with a softer sound, and I'll be sticking with them in the final build to keep. In terms of personal use, I'm still adjusting from TKL down to 75% when it comes to remapping keys and accessing layers because I do prefer not accessing layers. Another huge plus on the Sonnet is the frame design with tapered sides, so it's a lot easier to pick up and I really like that. Additional reasons why I think the Mode Sonnet is a great custom board aside from the customizations is the price and availability. I've worked with Mode for just over 2 years now, and I will say not only is the quality great, but the fact that their fulfillment time is fast and the pricing is well worth what they put out. There isn't really much for me to convince custom keyboard veterans as to why they should pick up a Mode keyboard, but I can 100% say that for anyone who's new into the hobby, Mode Designs is a great place to start if you want to really experience what it's like buying, building, and using a custom keyboard. When it comes to layouts, if you want a 75%, yes, I can absolutely recommend the Sonnet. If you want a TKL, yes, I can absolutely recommend the 80. And yes, I do currently prefer the Sonnet over the 80. The guys at Mode Designs are also extremely helpful when it comes to customer service, and they've also built a very supportive community in their Discord server, which you can join, and I'll link that in the video description below. I also want to note that all the Mode keyboards that I personally own, I bought. None of them were ever given to me. I will link my build code in the description here as well, but aside from that, that is all I have on the Mode Sonnet. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.